everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Chanel Fabio Guild, Lion Chanel Fabio Guild, and I will be hosting today's Constitution and Bylaws webinar. So I like to start with a roadmap or agenda, our plan of action. So we're going to begin with my welcome and introduction. We're going to go over some basics. Then we're going to review the standard Constitution and Bylaws provided by Lions International. Accessibility, how to navigate Constitution and Bylaws, amendment to your club's Constitution and Bylaws, and questions and answers. This is going to be a lot of me talking, so in order for this to not get boring, about halfway through I will open the floor for questions. However, the best way to communicate the questions to me would be to type it straight into the chat. I will not stop what I'm doing at that moment to address your questions because I may get to it further on in the presentation. However, the two instances that I have that we're going to stop for questions and answers, I'll refer to the chat first before I open the floor. The other thing I want to tell everybody is if you see my eyes avert left or right, I am trying to keep myself on time. I don't want to keep anybody over. So I'm paying attention to the clock. And I have notes and I'm on a dual screen. So if I avert my eyes this way or that way, it's because not that I'm looking to the sky, it's because I'm trying to keep us flowing. Okay. So about your host, about me, why am I the one having this conversation with you? Like I said, my name is Lion Chanel Fabio, Fabio Guild. My club is the Brooklyn New Lots Lions Club. I attended Ithaca College in upstate New York, where I got my bachelor's in legal studies. And then I went to The Ohio State University, Moritz College of Law, where I received my Juris Doctorate. I'm currently admitted to practice law in the state of New York since 2014. I was granted this district position by our district governor. She's an avid believer in new faces, taking on leadership roles. So she had faith in me, being aware of my legal background. And so that's the reason I'm the one in here having this conversation with you today. So let's get to the basics. People throw around the phrase Constitution and Bylaws all the time. So I wanted to make it immensely clear to everyone listening. I think the most important thing that we can do is know what we're talking about when we say the words Constitution and Bylaws. There's no need to take notes on anything that's on the screen. Take notes on anything that I say that's not on the screen because you will get a copy of the PowerPoint after the presentation. So a constitution is the aggregate of fundamental principles or established precedents that determine how an entity is to be governed. So the word I want you to remember here is principles. The bylaws define the things like the officers' titles, responsibilities, requirements of membership, how the officers will be assigned, how meetings will be conducted. They dictate the way the group functions. So the word I want you to remember for bylaws is function. They help lay out the organization's map so everyone will know the purpose and the day-to-day functions, the day-to-day operations. So what's the difference? So Constitution is the operating principles, it's how we're governed, whereas the bylaws speak to the specific rules of how things work. Now, another phrase that you'll hear often is policies or policies and procedures. Very similar to bylaws, not the same. Policies and procedures are very, very day-to-day. So in all three of these documents, you'll see words repeat themselves. So like board of directors, for example. So the Constitution will say there is a board of directors, and they may even say these are the people who are the board of directors, but the bylaws will then go on to say these are their duties, these are their roles. It gets down into the nitty-gritty. That being said, it's very interesting. I'm actually going to take a bit of an opposite approach today when I discuss it. When we get into the Constitution, I'm going to be a little bit more specific than I am about the bylaws. Because if I'm specific about the bylaws, we'll be here all night. Because the bylaws is in itself very specific. So I will not go over policies and procedures. Some clubs don't even carry them. However, I want you to understand that that's like very, very specific. Like our meetings are going to be on Mondays, the second Monday of the month or whatever. That's very specific. Whereas the bylaws may say there's going to be a monthly meeting. And the Constitution may say meetings must be held. So you understand how gradually from one document we become more and more specific. So it's important to me that you understand the purpose of each document so that you understand how we're assessing each document and what role each document is supposed to play in your club. There's another 2 words that I don't have on the slide that I want you to understand. And like, it came to me when I was prepping for it, when I was doing my review of my prep, because as lawyers, sometimes we take for granted things that people know because it's so normal to me. But I realized that in common language, there's some words that we use interchangeably that aren't quite as interchangeable from a legal perspective. So as we're assessing this document, you'll see 2 words. You'll see shall and may. Shall means you must. May means you can. So if I say you shall not wear blue, that means you cannot wear blue. If I say you may wear blue, that means it's kind of up to you, or you may. So shall means must, juxtaposed to may means can. So those are our vocabulary words for the day, our basics for assessing the document. So what I'm going to do from here on out, this is where your pen and paper comes out. This is where your notes writings comes, because I'm not going to say everything. I didn't put everything on the screen that I'm going to say. We're going to do our standard Constitution review. I'm not going to tell you every detail, but when I'm done with this, you'll have a general idea of the content of each of the sections of this portion of the Constitution. This is the standard Constitution, the one that is provided by the Lions. So the name portion, so there are 13 articles of the Constitution. Some of them are, excuse me, some of them are very basic, some of them are very in-depth. So when you have the document and your index at the very beginning, this is exactly how it is broken down. If you look at the document that I sent via email, this is exactly how it's broken down. With subcategories, of course, but this is how it's broken down. So I'm going to go over each of the 13, giving you an overview. Not going to get too detailed, but an overview of each section. So the name of the club. When this is a blank in your document, in the standard document, this is for the club to fill out, and you must use the actual name, not the acronym, not what we call it. You must use the official name of the club is what goes here. The purpose, this will usually stand the same. Very seldom would a club find a purpose to amend this. It's understanding, good government and citizenship, civil welfare, community, unity of members or unite members, provide open forum for public interest matters, and encourage service without financial gain. Again, these are our standard Lions purposes. Membership discusses eligibility. We've all kind of got that. We're here, right? So we're eligible. It's invitation only. As you all know, a sponsor must be a person in good standing. Investigation is done by the membership committee, and then it's submitted to the board of directors. Forfeiture. So this is a beautiful example of the shall and the may. So expulsion may happen by two-thirds vote from the board of directors, right? So you can be expelled, right? However, expulsion, a member shall be removed if the member's conduct is in violation of the international constitution, bylaws, and board policy. And it goes on to say, or the charter of the club can be canceled. So that means you must do this, and in the event that you don't do this, the charter of the club can be canceled. So that's an example of the shall or the may. You'll see that very often through the document, but I wanted to give you an example because if it says shall, you got to do it, or there's very often a repercussion placed. The emblem, we've all seen it. This little guy over here, you know, it's this, the lion's emblem. We're all very familiar with it. This guy over here. And supremacy. So this is something that is kind of like a law school theory, if you will. So if anybody remembers from history or civics, it's the concept of preemption. So in the event a change is made to your constitution, it must not contradict with any of the rules of the bylaws, constitution, or policies of the districts or international. That means their rules are superior to ours. So say, for example, the general rule is that if we're going to make a change to the Constitution, there must be a minimum of 14-day notice. So if your change is that it's 28 days, that does not contradict any of the district rules or the international rules. However, if you're changed that it's 7 days notice, that then contradicts and they run supreme. So that means their 14 days applies and ours is null, because the constitution or the rules of the, everything of the district and international is supreme to our constitution, to the club's constitution. Very interesting on the membership, the club size article, it says the goal shall be 20. We shall aspire to maintain 20. However, it's not a requirement that 20 is had at all times. However, that must be the goal. So as I discussed before, the officers of the club are listed in Article 7, the president, immediate past president, et cetera, et cetera. The removal is by 2/3 of the entire club with good cause. With good cause means it's subjective, it's not specific or finite, it's whatever the club deems is good cause. It's not an objective standard. And that is the entire club, not only the board. The board of directors, it lists the members of the board of directors, the officers, plus the optional. This is an area, again, they call it optional. If your club deems that one of these are absolutely essential, you can change the status from optional to essential. A quorum, we should all be familiar with what that is. So a quorum is just the majority must be present in order to have a decision making. And it also lists the, excuse me, the duties of the board of directors. So again, you can follow along through I believe it's like 7 of them, 7 duties. So it goes on to describe the delegates to international and district conventions. I'm sure you're all aware of this. It's 1 rep and 1 alternate for every 25 or major fraction, which is 13. For the international, 1 rep for every 10 members or major fraction, which for the district is 5. The selection of the reps are by the board of directors or designated by a committee. The club branch program. So the function of the branch is to, you create a branch where the circumstance doesn't yet warrant a charter. Either there are not enough people or whatever the case may be. At this point, that location doesn't require a charter. The branch members are in fact club members. They vote just like club members do. The interesting component to this is funds raised in the branch area is to be spent in the branch area. If it is dissolved, there are 2 avenues that a branch could be dissolved. Either it can become a new club or it can just simply be dissolved. If it becomes a new club, the funds that the branch previously raised goes to the new club. If it does not, it goes back to the original charter club. It dissolves with the vote of the majority of the club. Article 11 is club funds. Money raised to the public goes back to the public. Nice, easy, simple. Administrative, with the exception of the cost of operating. So, if you're doing a candy giveaway, the funds raised by the public can cover the cost of the candy, but it's not going to go back to a Christmas dinner for your club members. Administrative funds, that is what contributes to the members. Amendments, and this is what a lot of people came for today, can be discussed or voted on at any regular meeting or special meeting that has a quorum. 2/3 of the members present represent the will of the club. Provided that the board has previously considered its merits, notice, it can be written, electric or snail mail, and it has to go personally to each member at least 14 days prior to the meeting at which a vote will be held. So that is my bullet train version of the Constitution. That portion of it is about 12 pages, and I surmised it in less than 12 minutes. So that's the gist of it. So this is my first moment to offer you guys to ask me any questions, because I've been speaking for 18 minutes and I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing my voice. So I'm going to check the chat first to see if we have any questions. I don't have anything in the chat so far. Does anybody have any questions for me so far on my coverage of the Constitution or the basics of the language used in in the Constitution itself.
Yes, this is Lion Pearl from Brooklyn Private Lions Club. Can you just briefly go over the branch club, the purpose of it?
So the purpose of the branch club, and so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Can I do that? I'm going to stop share for a second. The purpose of the branch club is, they say when circumstances are not conducive to it being an independent charter. So so the circumstances will be different depending on the location. So for example, if the particular area does not yet have enough members to amount to a charter, if you remember, the charter requires that there are 20 members. If, for example, this particular area doesn't have enough people interested yet, that's a reason for a charter, for a branch, because they're not ready to be a charter yet. In different areas of the world, it could be too rural. There are not that many people who live there in general. Is there like a particular reason that you're asking that where it could be applicable to kind of hone my answer to your question?
Yeah, because no, I sort of missed the beginning part of your sentence when it came to the branch. I didn't get the purpose. And when I was reviewing the bylaws previously, I didn't quite get the purpose, I didn't quite get the right reason for the branch. So you've just clarified it for me.
Oh, I'm glad.
So I thank you very much.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions for me?
Yeah, good evening. This is Lion Mike Jensen from Brooklyn Crown Heights. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Terrific. I have just a little bit more detail about in regards to who were responsible for choosing delegates for district or international convention. Is it the sole purpose of the president or the board of directors should be choosing those delegates?
So hold on. So that is in Article 9.
Yes.
So if you have your document, shoot down to Article 9 with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the board of directors or the designated committee. So if you have a committee on your club in particular, it's not just the president. No version of it, at least the way that it's written standard, calls for the president independently. So some clubs can have a committee designated to the convention. Some clubs may not. However, it's either the board of directors or the committee.
Thank you.
Okay. And just another little blip on that note, although I'm sure everybody assumes this, the delegate chosen must be in good standing.
Of course.
Anybody else? I'm going to give it like 1 more minute of silence.
This is Lion Iris. I just wanted to know if we can pause for a moment. District Governor Ingrid is on. I'm not sure. She may want to say a few words to the Lions that are in attendance.
Sure. Absolutely.
Good evening, fellow Lions. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Lion Chanel for accepting the responsibility when she was saying, why me? I'm a new Lion. As she said, I like to give new faces, new Lions opportunity. Once I think you can deliver, I give you the opportunity to do so. I think this is a very important session, and lots of clubs I know have not been updating their constitution. During my visits to the club from second to first, there were lots of questions that were constitutionally related. And I said to them, have you not updated your constitution? It's in there. It's in the bylaws. So there are several things. And I said to Chanel, I think we need to bring this. And as her thing said, it was for members 3 years and under and older, new clubs and older clubs as well. So I hope you really take the opportunity to enjoy her presentation and ask questions. If I disappear before the end of her session, I have another function to go to this evening. So Chanel, I thought I wasn't going to be here because I thought it was at 7. So when I saw it was 6, I said, let me join you in your first half of it. So thank you very much, Lions, for joining us on this cold night. I hope you have your popcorn and your hot chocolate and you're ready to go for the rest of our session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, District Governor. Okay, you guys are probably ready for me to keep speaking, but before I speak, I want everybody to stretch, get ready. We're gonna keep going. Take your moment. Like, don't just sit there. Don't let your legs fall asleep. Wiggle your legs, wiggle your arms. Let's get ready to jump back into business.
Lion Chanel, I have a question. This is
Sure.
Lion Astrid from Metropolis.
Absolutely.
The definition of a member in good standing.
We're gonna get to that.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
So the thing with the members, and I'll just briefly say, there's this like whole thing about like this whole section. The first section of the bylaws, which we're about to jump into, is all about membership. So we'll get there in like T-minus 2 minutes, T-minus 1 minute. Does anybody have any questions before I jump in? Anybody else?
Yes, good evening. Lion Sheila Green again.
Hi.
Just a question, if you could just go back a touch to the changing to the Constitution. What does that involve? Or if there's a section in the bylaws on that, I can read it.
So well, it's not in the bylaws, it's actually in the Constitution. It was the last one I covered. It was on amendments. However, I have a slide devoted to the actual process of amendments and when we amend. So bear with me and we will come back we'll address that in a sec.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No problem. But it is the last section, amendments. That's the last section of bylaws, and it's the last section of the Constitution itself. Okay, anybody else before we keep going? Okay, I am going to start the party again. Can everybody see my screen? We're good?
Yes, we can see.
Awesome. So, bylaws review. So the first section, like I mentioned, is all about membership and defining each type of member. It's extensive. I was actually shocked to see there were so many types of members. And I was overwhelmed. I'm like, how am I going to describe this to everyone? And then I realized they did a better job than I could. And page 30 of the document that I sent you, which is in the district's constitution, well, the sample from international, page 30 is a chart for each type of member. It goes through active, affiliate, associate, honorary, life, member at large, and privileged. And it says what rights they have, what obligations they have, like if they count towards the delegates, if they don't count towards the delegates. It's actually very, very interesting. Put very basic, the active member has all of the rights, all of the privileges, and all of the responsibility. So gotta pay your dues, but you can be on the board, you can vote, all of that. I won't go into each and every one of them because some of these we may never see, depending on our walk with Lion. But it is thoroughly described. And if you fit into one of these bubbles, just look at the chart on page 30 to see what you're required to do, what rights you have, and what rights you don't. And so now to our question on good standing. It's really straightforward. If you have money owed for more than 30 days, you are not in good standing. You must receive written notice from the secretary, and only if you're in good standing can you be in office or vote. That is the definition of being in good standing. Dual members are not allowed unless you're an honorary or associate member. It explains resignation, which is effective upon acceptance from the board. The board can hold acceptance of your resignation if you owe money. So it's not a way to get out of owing. Reinstatement, if it's been more than you can be reinstated, but if it's been more than 12 months since you were previously active, it's like the brand new process again. You have to be approved. The committee reviews you just like if you're brand new to Lionism, essentially. Transfer membership, very similar to reinstatement. However, transfer is eligible, but you must be in good standing. If there's a failure to pay for 60 days, the board can decide if you're going to be dropped. That's a can again, not shall. So it's not a guarantee that 60 days of indebtedness requires that you're dropped. However, it can. Again, this is another can. The attendance and participation is another can space. It shall, but it says encourage. So the club shall encourage regular participation in club membership and activities. So it doesn't say there's a requirement for how often you come to meetings. However, the club should encourage it. So when we go high level to bylaws and I talk about being specific in policy and procedures, if your club wanted to make such a requirement, the adjustment would probably go to your policies and procedures as that is a day-to-day function of the club juxtaposed to something that is high level. So Article 2 goes over the election and filling vacancies. January 1 is the start date for the Lionistic calendar. That's pretty basic. We all, I think, know that, but it is in the Constitution and bylaws, so it's something that we actually do have to stick with. Conversely, if you go down to Section 6 of Article 2, the vote is it notes that the vote is to be held for the board in April. However, it says, or as determined by the board. So that's not something that is as hard as fast as our January 1 start date. However, it's like a recommendation, a strong recommendation when they get that specific. So Article 3, remember I told you it gets a little bit more specific in the bylaws. So it goes through the duties of each officer. So if you remember in the Constitution, it said who the officers were. Now it really gets into the real specifics of each officer. Article 4 speaks to the board of directors, and it lists the optional roles as well. One of the changes that I think could be reasonable, depending on your club in this area, is you can choose, like, for your club, and speaks to the culture of your club, if you want a role to not be optional, if you want it to be required every year, depending on the nature of the culture of your club. I know, some clubs really rely heavily on lion tamers and other clubs never use them. So you can leave it as optional, but that is the area that possibly could call for change. An area that I could see a lot of change for is Article 5, the committees. And the way that they wrote it, it actually kind of suggests change or invites you to amend. So the standing committee, I'm getting feedback. Hello? I can't tell who it is. Can you guys hear me? Okay, we're good. So the standing committees are appointed by the club president, with the exception of the chairperson that is to serve on the board of directors, which would require an election. Additional committees may be established as determined by the club's board of directors. So I know that there are some specialty clubs within the district. So say, for example, there was like a nursing club. If they wanted like something unique to that profession for a committee devoted to that thing, this would be the area that it could be added. If it's something that they always wanted and they wanted it to be a requirement for their club, this is the area that could be amended. So it goes through each one of the committees, again, doing a great job of detailing and explaining the committees. The two interesting components to this section for me as well is the president ex post ex officio, it means that the president is essentially a member of every committee, the president of the club. Additionally, the committee reporting, each committee through its chairperson should be encouraged as necessary to report, either verbally or in writing, each month to the board of directors. So again, this is a rule that's giving you options. I think that flexibility when it comes to, as a person who has served in a committee, I think flexibility when it comes to that requirement is a great idea, but that speaks to your club and the culture thereafter. Article 6 gets into meetings. As I mentioned before, it's not as high level as the Constitution, but it's higher level than policies and procedures would be. And so it explains the different kinds of meetings and, what should happen there. But if you pay attention to the last sentence of, the first 3 sections, they're recommendations. It says, it's recommended the board of directors meet at least once each month. It's recommended that the club hosts an event or service activity at least once each month. They're recommendations more so than instructions. So special club meeting, annual meeting. The annual meetings where installations supposed to take place and final reports are given. It should be close to the end of the Lionistic year, but the time and place is determined by, again, the board of directors. The anniversary, optional again. The quorum applies to the general meetings just as it does for the board of directors meetings. So more than half of the club must be present for the meeting. And the vote for the majority of the quorum, those who are present and voting, counts as the decision of the club. So if your club has 20 people and 11 people show up, and 6 people make a vote, although 6 does not account for the majority of your club, because you had a quorum and because the majority of that quorum voted this particular way, that is deemed the decision of the club. So make sure you show up if you care. So fees and dues. This is approved by the club members at the annual meeting. If you realize in this section of your sample, there are a lot of blanks. That is because this is going to be unique to your club. I don't think it's going to be super unique throughout the district, but I could be wrong. So this comes back. So Article 8 comes back to the club branch. Again, I know there were some questions about the branch administration. The branch has an elected board, if you will, of their own. They have a branch president, secretary, and treasurer. And they also have a branch liaison. The branch liaison is from the charter club, and they serve as a liaison, but they maintain their membership to their primary membership or relationship with the parent club. However, they serve as a liaison between the two, and that constitutes the executive committee of the branch. The members of the branch may vote. They can vote with the branch, and they can vote with the parent club as well, because they are members of the parent club. Again, this section has another series of blanks that would be specific to your club. Article 9 is miscellaneous. Again, the Lionistic year. It's the Lionistic year. There's nothing we can do about that. That's not an amendment that you can make. It's July 1 to June 30th. The Roberts Rules of Order, newly revised. My lovely club president gave it to all of us to begin our Lionistic year this year. And I hope to have a session on the Roberts Rules of Order with the club, with the district at some point this Lionistic year as well. But those are the rules that we follow for our club meetings. Partisan politics and religion. There shall be no partisan politics or sectarian religion at the club. Furthermore, it goes on to say you can't use club resources for campaigning. So that was interesting. So it can't be the club goes out to campaign for a particular person. No officer shall receive compensation for their duties that they're in their official capacity except the secretary, which is fixed by the board of directors. Club dispute resolution procedure, pretty straightforward. The bylaws and constitution are what rule when there are disputes amongst the club. It's not very complicated. And then the amendments to the bylaws, again, they're very similar to the rules for amending the Constitution. The primary difference is that the language in this portion does not require the preliminary review by the board of directors. It's not to say that you can't do it. However, in the legal profession, when you compare two documents prepared by the same group of people, when there's a selection to have absence, there's an inference that it's on purpose. So with the language pertaining to amendments for the Constitution, it required that there was review by the board of directors as to the merits of the amendment. The bylaws does not have that specific delineation. It doesn't say they can't, but it doesn't overtly require that does take place. So, accessibility. One of the things that I thought was very interesting when I was asked to take on this role, the first thing that I do, because I am a millennial, is I got on the internet and I started searching for things. Every member should have access to the club's constitution and bylaws. My recommendation is that it is posted online, whether it's in a Google document or on your club's website. My strong recommendation is that it is posted somewhere online. If you search the other districts, online constitution and bylaws are standard. I went through MD20 and I started pulling clubs and other districts and things of that nature. Online constitution and bylaws are standard. And in a second, you'll see why I prefer it to be digital. I know some people like hard paper, and if that's the culture of your club, that could be what you do. But I'll teach you how I navigate my constitution and bylaws, and you'll see why I don't necessarily think that that's the best option, because it's a very long document. So the physical constitution and bylaws, if you have a physical copy, page 3 through 6 list out each section, like I did when I was discussing it, of the document, and subsections. So what you're looking for, you can find that way. The utility of the electronic document is the ability to digitally search. The search control, you can search control any term or title pertinent information in the Constitution and bylaw. So if you press Control F in your open digital document and you type in whatever it is, you can find everywhere it pops up. When a question is asked to me about what's the content of the Constitution and bylaws, even if I know it in my head, I'm going to control find it. When I was asked about branch, like I knew the answer, but I control find it, I said branch, like what do we have on the branch? So that's the utility of it being in an electronic format. There's also a little bit more ease when updates do take place, instead of having to provide everyone again with a new copy of it. Save the trees, let's not kill paper or waste paper. It's just an electronic copy. And you can circulate it, via email, but in addition to via email, I believe there should be some shared space where your members can access the document. So amendments. Remember I mentioned we were going to get here. So what are the limitations with the amendments? The only real limitation noted in the Constitution and bylaws is preemption, which I discussed before, which in short says, just don't contradict anything our other rules say. And not just in this document, but as to the district and international. That's the heart and soul of the limitation to the amendments. The question is, though, do you really need or want an amendment? If you have unique officers that must serve a role in your club for your club to have the nature or the personality or serve the purpose of your club, then that's appropriate. Or if a committee is a requirement of your club, that's important. But if you have an incident that elicits the desire for a permanent change. So, for example, you heard me discuss that in order to have an amendment, you need 14 days notice. Maybe you amend it and you get a crazy amount of uproar from your club that there was not enough notice. And everybody feels like we should have a month to go over this. They feel like in addition to that, there should be a club discussion on it. When something major like that happens and it's a permanent change that you want, that's when you look to amend these documents. So what does the process require? A vote at any meeting. It can be regular or special. The merits to be discussed by the board as to the Constitution. As I noted, that aspect wasn't specifically expressed in the bylaws portion. The quorum is required, 2/3 of the voting members, and a minimum of 14 days written notice. Written notice can be via email or via snail mail. Please do not send it to anybody my age via snail mail because I don't check it. And so I again open the floor for questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say the official year starts on July 1, not January 1?
Good evening, Lion Chanel. You may want to start in the chat section. I think we have 1 or 2 questions there first.
Okay. Generally speaking, for the BQ Lions, are elections only for president, or are the other roles go through the election? Taylor Singh, if you would clarify, what do you mean BQ Lions? Is that the name of your club?
I think it's Brooklyn and Queens.
Oh, generally speaking, for the Brooklyn and Queens clubs, are elections only for president, or are there other roles that go through election? So no, there are other roles that go through election as well. The election portion specifically discusses it, but the rest of the roles can be elected as well, or usually elected as well. Yes, sorry. The Lionistic year, sorry guys, I did mean July 1st, not January 1st. So should the officers elected to serve in their club for the new Lionistic year of July 1st be installed on or before the start of the new Lionistic year? So the installation occurs at the annual meeting. And so that specific date, the recommendation is that it runs close to the close of the year. But that date is actually selected by the board of directors. Did that answer that question? I think it did. The definition, so the next question, can I repeat the quorum? So the definition of a quorum literally means the majority of your club. So if you have 20 members, it has to be 11 or more. And furthermore, the tough part, I think, to swallow with that is that the decision of the quorum constitutes the decision of the club. So if you have 20 members of your club, and I'm making the numbers simple, so I'm not being literal, but if you have 20 members of your club, 11 people are in attendance and in good standing to vote, et cetera, and 6 vote a particular way, 6 people can essentially make the decision for that 20-person club because only 11 were in attendance. But in order to have a vote, you must have a quorum. In the context of this question is from Keith Williams, Lion Keith Williams. In the context of the Constitution and bylaws of the Lions organization clubs, whether international or local, is there such thing as unwritten laws? If so, will you explain? As far as the Constitution and bylaws go, no, there are no unwritten laws. That may speak to policies and procedures, because sometimes the day-to-day aspects are not overtly written. They should be, and they could be, and I strongly recommend that those things are committed to writing in the event that there's a disagreement. The nature of my profession says you write everything. If my husband tells me he's gonna buy something in the grocery, I remind him via text message so I can tell him he told me he was gonna do it. So nothing exists unless it's written. So my strong recommendation would be that if that is a policy and procedure, it's committed to writing. There's no I'm not aware of, and anybody on the call who has been around longer than me, because I am relatively new, anything that speaks to unwritten rules, and nothing in the documents that I reviewed suggests as such. So I think that's all that were in the chat. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to ask me?
Good evening, Lion Chanel. We have another question that just popped up in the Q&A section, in the chat section.
Sure. So good standing. So that's an interesting way to pose that question. So if member dues should be paid in full, if it's prior to the due date of the dues, then you're technically not indebted. So good standing speaks to indebtedness. So yes, membership dues should be paid in full if the due date for that has passed. That makes sense? And the due date is dictated, by internal policies and procedures. Does that answer your question, Lion Astrid? And yes, you must be in good standing in order to vote.
Lion Janelle, this is Lion Balsia from Brooklyn Metropolis Lions Club. I think your information is very informative, and I'm really gaining a lot from this. But my question was, seeing that we're now starting a new Lionistic year, I know you answered, but I'm still not clear on your answer. If we are starting a new Lionistic year and officers were elected, should these persons be installed, seeing that so that they can start their duty on the new Lionistic year, or is there a specific time in which it should be done?
It should be done at the year-end meeting. So technically speaking, yes, it should be done prior to the beginning of the Lionistic year, because it should be done at the year-end meeting. The date of that year-end meeting is determined by the board. So it's not like I could tell you, it has to be done by June 1st. The board determines when that end of year meeting is. However, it should be done at that year-end meeting. That's when installations are done.
Thank you.
No problem. Galaxy Tablet, I don't know your name, asks, could a non-member board member vote at a board meeting? No. I don't know if there was a specific reason for that question, but no. I'm going to give it 2 more minutes for questions and answers, because I have a little bit of my spiel left after this, and I don't want to hold anybody past 7 o'clock. The silence is so awkward. I'm going to say 1 more minute. Okay. Can regular members attend a board meeting? So the Constitution doesn't overtly speak to that. However, it does limit to some extent. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing. It does limit to some extent who can vote at the board meeting. So I assume, it can be inferred. Board of Directors, regular meeting, Board of Directors, special meeting. Wait a second, let me think of this. No, I'm gonna say so do you mean a committee meeting or like an actual Board of Directors meeting?
Busy working parents with 3 kids, Morgan, Grace, Jason,
yes.
and Taylor. They have outgrown.
Yes, they can't vote. So the answer is yes, they can't vote. It didn't actually, I don't see that it speaks to attendance to the board meetings, but.
May I say something, Taylor?
Sure.
Lion Sony from Hollis Lions Club. There are times that the meeting is not finished and a member comes in. They can sit at the meeting, but they do not take active part in it. And that's it. But they can sit, but they don't have to take active part in the board meeting. That's what I was told, and that's when I was, which is how it went.
Okay.
You can be there, but you do not take active part in the board meeting.
Can I say something?
A regular member.
Hello?
Yes, sure.
This is line Audrey, line Reverend Audrey Julian from Venture Pines Living. A regular member can, if a board member invites a regular member to a meeting, they can attend the board meeting. But as other members said, they don't have the right to vote. But they can attend a board meeting. A regular floor member.
Okay, this is PDG Veronica. I agree. Sometimes you have a committee and the chair wants a member or two from that committee to attend the board meeting to explain the project, so they can bring them in. They can sit into the meeting, but as said before, they don't have a vote. So they can, and they can observe just for education purposes. We can invite a regular member to a board meeting to see what we do at the board level. So they can attend, with the knowledge of who invited them, but no vote.
So thank you all for your clarification. So the thing about it is with the Constitution, just like with our national Constitution, it explains rights. So because an individual can be invited, that doesn't mean that individual has a right to be present. So that's the reason that, like, when the question was posed, like I told you, I control find it. I'm going back and I'm looking to see if there's a specific right for the presence. There's no right for an individual a non-board member to attend a board meeting. However, invitation, there's no prohibition on the permission or the invitation of the board to invite someone. So that's I guess the difficulty. So I completely agree and I support what everyone said, but there's no, if I as a regular board member or a regular club member was like, hey, you guys have been having board meetings and I want to know what's going on, the Constitution doesn't give that person a right to attend. However, an invitation can occur.
This is Pearl John at Brooklyn Target Lions. Can any member of a club call an emergency meeting? Hello?
An emergency meeting? Or you mean like a special meeting?
Yeah, like a special meeting, yes.
You mean like special meeting? Yes. So according to the Constitution, a special meeting is to be called by the president or a majority of the board members. It does not create room for a regular member to call a special meeting. There's nothing delineated as an emergency meeting in the Constitution and bylaws and the standard ones. However, I think the closest thing that I could see to what you're describing would be what they dub a special meeting.
Thank you.
Sure.
Lion Chanel, if I could just add a little bit to that answer. Many clubs might indicate in their bylaws what may be permissible, and usually it's through the president. If there is a need, if someone has indicated to the president that there's a need for something special to be addressed, and the president agrees, certainly if spelled out in the bylaws, the president can call an emergency meeting of the club. I don't know if that was a part of that question.
I think the reason also that the document gives two avenues for this special meeting, or as you guys dub it, an emergency meeting, is in the event like the emergency meeting is about the president, then obviously the president's not going to be the one to call said meeting. So it gives an alternative avenue for the board of directors to step in to call said emergency or special meeting, as they call it. And again, these are the standards. Going back to the concept of an amendment, the amendment, such an amendment wouldn't be contrary to anything else. So this is an amendment if you wanted, you know, a regular member to have the capacity to do so. I think it can, you know, be amended to you can amend your constitution as such. However, I will note that a special meeting must have at least 10 days prior to the date thereof, must give notice for at least 10 days prior, according to the standard bylaw. So I am going to shut it down for questions because where it's about to be 7 o'clock, and I want to give you guys my few final words. So this is not goodbye, it's see you later. If your club needs a consultation or you have a simple question, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. If you have specific questions about an amendment or your amendment process, the flyer that was initially sent out has my direct email address on it. If there's anything pertaining to your club's specific needs or your understanding of the Constitution and bylaws that you have a question about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. It is my honor to support you guys in the service through my service to the district. So I genuinely opened my email. It was in that communication. I will type it again in the chat. If you guys have any questions for me regarding Constitution and bylaws, sometimes it's easier, even with a lot of the questions where I answered, it was like, well, what's your specific question? Why are you asking me this? Sometimes it's easier to give, you know, what you specifically need, or speak to your specific circumstance in order to ask a question. Carl Elbers is the name that's listed. I can't hear you. You're breaking up quite a bit.
Maybe Lion Chanel, we can ask that person to type into the chat.
Sure. I'm Lion. Carl, if you could just type your question into the chat because I cannot hear you. Carl Elbers. Anybody else hearing him, or is it just me?
Good evening, Lion Chanel. I think we had one more question that came into the chat.
I would never invite attend me, but he has to invite the president and someone. Two, I don't know why I've been saying that. I've been trying to say I someone.
I did not hear the spoken question. I will speak to the question that was put into the chat. Lion Carl, please type your question into the chat when you have a sec. Can you have a general and a board meeting? Yeah. I don't know that I understand that question all the way, but my general answer is yes. Do you mean simultaneously? Or do you mean just like, can we have them? Because we do. I think that's it for that one. Thank you guys for all your thank yous. And the copy of the PowerPoint will be sent via email at the end of this presentation. I also want to say a very huge thank you to Lion Iris for all of her technological help and reaching out to me and talking through some things with me. It is a pleasure to work with. She was a pleasure to work with. And thank you again to the district governor for trusting me with informing you guys. especially as someone who's new to the party. If I did not answer your question with clarity, please shoot me an email. I don't want to hold anybody up, but shoot me an email, or and either we can discuss it via email, or I can give you a call and we can follow up with it.
Where's your email? I don't see it.
It's chanel.fabio@gmail.com. It's higher up in the chat. I've typed it a couple of times.
Oh.